Alaska has gone communist, folks. They've gone the way of Russia. They've gone the way of communist Russia. They've gone the way of communist Russia. Sarah Palin once used to say she can see the Soviet tide from where she's standing. And now that Soviet tide has come over, Alaska said no to Sarah Palin's Magumbos because they've been captivated by Nancy Pelosi's. Believe me, here we go. Now Republicans are coming out against ranked choice voting, which is pretty cool. It's awesome. I mean, it's like anything and everything that allows a Democrat to win is actually illegal. Like mail-in ballots, illegal. Anything that gives a competitive edge to the Democratic Party, even if it's on accident, because mail-in ballots were great for Florida. Will Menaker had a good take on this. Ranked choice voting, a scam to rig elections. The popular vote, scam to rig elections. Registering voters, you better believe that's a scam to rig elections. Counting votes in an election, buddy. Don't even get me started. Tom Cotton straight up is like, ranked choice voting is a scam to rig elections. 60% of Alaska voters voted for a Republican, but thanks to a convoluted process and ballot exhaustion, which disenfranchises voters, a Democrat won. Just say it, motherfucker. You just want voting to be illegal for Democrats. Counting votes, that's fraud, brother. In this system, if you fail to rank all candidates, and many voters would, as they've been voting for one candidate for decades, your ballot will effectively be thrown out during the elimination process. He's just trying to fucking explain away an opportunity. How did they lose with 60%? It's called a split vote, because even if it wasn't fucking ranked choice, that would mean that there's 2 Republicans on the ballot and would still end up with a loss, with an electoral loss for one of those Republicans. Both of those Republicans. Republicans are now coming out against ranked choice voting, which, if I'm not mistaken, didn't impact them at all up until this fucking election. And I think they were in favor of it originally. Former Governor Sarah Palin, a Republican, and former state representative Mary Peltola, a Democrat, were the top 2 vote getters in August 16 primary to replace former Representative Don Young, who died in March. But because neither top 50% of the first place votes, it will be the ballots of those who backed the third candidate in the race, Republican businessman Nick Begich III, that determined the outcome. The path from open primary to ranked choice results. Alaskan voters in 2020 approved an overhaul of the state's election system. Sorry, this is a new thing. Moving to a ranked choice voting system. They voted for it. There are plenty of countries that do ranked choice, first past the post voting, ranked choice voting. It is a system in which, like, you literally rank who you fucking want. And if neither of your candidates, depending on, well, the one in Alaska, if neither of your candidates hit 50%, then they factor in your secondary ballots, like your second choice. And that's it. Elections in Alaska now start with an open primary, which candidates of all parties compete for, and all voters are allowed to participate, casting their ballots for the one contender they prefer. The top 4 vote getters, regardless of party, advance to the general election. Then in the general election, just voting for one of the top 4 candidates, voters rank their preferences in order. They are allowed to rank candidates 1 through 4, but are not required to do so. Voters could instead choose only to rank their preferred candidate or only rank their top 2. If no candidate receives more than 50% of the first place votes, then the ranked choice system is used to determine the winner. Amazing visual of what happened in Alaska. Yeah, there it is. Like, those guys still ended up giving a fuckload of votes over to Palin, and she still lost. Do you understand? So Begich voters were cutting it close between Palin and Begich anyway. And if this was a 3-party, if this was literally just a regular, not first past the post type open election, if this was an open like a jungle election, right? Then they would have lost anyway by a gigantic margin, as a matter of fact, by an even larger margin. Do you understand? So what Tom Cotton is saying is really fucking stupid, because Peltola, already got 75,000 votes. So Republicans should be more mad that they split the votes between 2 Republican candidates instead of first past the post. Sorry, is winner takes all. I might have said it incorrectly. Yes, this is ranked choice voting, not first past the post. I might have said it wrong. I'm sorry. So if this was first past the post, then Peltola would have fucking won anyway. She would have won regardless, because the problem here isn't that there is a ranked choice voting. The problem here is that there were 2 Republican candidates that split the fucking vote. So Republicans are mad that Republicans took a fucking L by splitting the fucking vote. It's just, I don't know what to say. They didn't even split the vote. You could have voted 1 for Republican as number 2 and then for the other 2, but they did that already. They did do that. But a much tinier percentage of Begich voters went and supported Peltola. The main problem here is that it doesn't seem like enough Alaskans wanted Palin to be their candidate. People have done math in every possible way, and there's no election method that has Palin winning. She just got less votes. Yeah, you can't do that. You can't try to math equation your way out of this while there's a second candidate candidate out there that got almost as many votes as Palin did. She would have lost in every fucking feasible way. Like, the only way they could have done this, I guess, the only way they could have done this is if the exhausted votes went to Palin. You know what I mean? That's it. Oh, I mean, here, we can do a ranked choice voting explainer too, if you want.
So what is ranked choice voting? In most parts of the United States, voters select a single candidate for each position on their ballot, and the candidate with the most votes wins. This is known as single-choice winner-take-all, which can sometimes result in the election of a candidate who earned only a small percentage of the vote, even when the majority of voters supported other candidates. But that's not the only way of electing our leaders. Ranked choice voting is another voting method which allows voters to rank their candidates in order of preference. In a ranked choice voting election, a candidate needs to earn more than half of the votes to win. All first choices are counted, and if a candidate has a majority, then they win, just like any other election. If not, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked that candidate as number one will have their votes count for their next choice. This process continues until a candidate earns a majority and is declared the winner. Let's look at an example. Here, you select orange as your first choice candidate, yellow as your second, pink as your third, and green as your final choice. The first choices are counted. Yellow earned 35%.
Why is this presented like a kindergarten lesson? Because that's what Republicans need. A kindergarten lesson on ranked choice voting so they can comprehend it. Most Americans, actually, not even Republicans, like most of you motherfuckers need that shit too. Let's be real.
Orange, 21%. Pink earned 28%, and green earned 16% of the vote. Because nobody won more than 50%, the candidate with the fewest votes is eliminated, and voters who picked him as their first choice have their ballots count for their second choice. This continues until a candidate receives more than half of the votes, or 50% plus 1. Ranked choice voting provides more choices, allowing more than two candidates to compete without fear of splitting the vote among like-minded individuals. Sometimes voters feel pressured to vote for the lesser of two evils. Ranked choice voting allows people to vote for their favorite candidate, not just against the candidates they dislike. With ranked choice voting, we see more positive campaigns and less negative advertising. Candidates are encouraged to reach out to as many voters as possible, including those supporting their opponents. They can build a winning coalition with like-minded candidates to earn voters' second and third choices. It's time to fix our democracy and make our elections work better for everybody. We can do that with ranked choice voting.
In your opinion, is there any downside to ranked voting? Yes. Sometimes the less offensive and rather the more like centrist, the more moderate candidate can end up winning because of that. Yeah. One critique of ranked choice voting is that it favors lowest common denominator, exactly, which is policy-free centrist liberals. It's what happened in New York City with Eric Adams. That is certainly a legitimate problem or a legitimate fear that people have. It's also entirely dependent on how well you strategize, though. If the most progressive person is the most popular and maintains the plurality, then it's good for the progressive because a lot of centrists will have to cave and side with the progressive voter. They're not going to vote defensively against the progressive voter and then go from like a moderate centrist to a fucking right-wing psychopath, right? However, in places like liberal safe havens, for example, the moderate voter, if they have the largest base of support, then, it's going to be difficult. I mean, that's always going to be the problem with democracy. Anyone that's popular enough will win. However, at least this removes the spoiler effect and allows for multi-party systems. Yeah. It's still the most feasible path for a progressive third-party candidate to be elected. Yeah, but there are additional complications. It has to be like an open primary. Can you explain why a centrist winning would be bad? Because centrists historically and still in contemporary society do not create adequate enough pushback on right-wing reactionary talking points and right-wing reactionary ideas. That's the reason. That's not great. Anyway, Wednesday's ranked choice tabulation comes months ahead of a November election in which the same process could decide the outcome of several key races. Palin, Peltola, and Begich are all on the ballot again in the race to win the House seat for a full term. Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski, who has been targeted by former President Donald Trump after she voted to convict his impeachment trial following the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th, is facing off against the Trump-backed Republican Kelly Tshibaka and two other candidates in her Senate seat. And the Republican governor Mike Dunleavy will face independent former Governor Bill Walker and two other contenders in the gubernatorial election. The beautiful part about Alaska, from what I understand, is that it's relatively cheap. If you recall, we talked about this 2-3 years ago almost, like when this death first occurred, that Alaskan elections are a gimme in comparison to how many dollars you need to spend to potentially win a seat. It's actually a pretty solid way for the Democratic Party to maintain its majority in an otherwise very competitive, very competitive Senate. Maybe not as much so Senate right now, it doesn't seem like, but certainly a competitive House election. But yeah, of course, Tom Cotton is lying about this. And the reason why Tom Cotton's lying about it is because he's a liar and because a Democrat ended up winning. But what's really funny is Sarah Palin, one, not realizing that she lost the election.
Voting. When it comes down to second and third place votes, that's going to decide who's going to win. I mean, really? Alaskans want Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi?
She at first couldn't comprehend that she lost, which is understandable. And then was like, wow, really? Alaskans want Joe Biden? Yeah, I mean, it turns out they want Nancy Pelosi. It's kind of weird. Seems like they nailed Palin a little bit. So yeah, there's that wonderful bit of news there.